£1.5 million for.
That's right.
Yeah.
All invested in by these lovely people. Okay, so I'm going to take the mood down a little bit after that wonderful, uplifting beer drinking session, and just remind us of where we are, which is at the end of September, going into a winter where energy prices have just gone up massively, and there may be people in this room who are just terrified by that. And I just want to, for those of you who've been interested in energy for a long time and have been active as Green Tea has been since, oh blimey, the beginning of the 2010s, if not before, we will all remember that we used to have a policy framework in the UK that was having a real impact on demand reduction. And all of that sort of disappeared between sort of 2012 and 2015. And that's why, as Sam was saying, demand reduction in households is not going down in the same way that it was then. If we had continued with that national policy framework, we would be going into this winter with the average household using 15 to 20% less energy than we all are now, and therefore facing 15 to 20% less impact on our fuel bills than we are all facing now. That, I'm sure, makes many of us, and I would include myself in this very strongly, feel quite depressed, quite anxious, wondering whether we've wasted the last 10 to 15 years of our life being active in the community and doing all of those roles that Sam has been saying. Starting from here, there is a research programme called CREDS, which is the Centre for Reducing Energy Demand, and I can't remember what the S means, but anyway, and it's led by another Oxford academic, Nick Eyre. And their research shows that we can start from now, and by in getting to net zero, we can halve our energy demand, which is a good thing. Starting from now, we could all do that. Nationally, we could do that. Oh, and the thing that I forgot to say is just in terms of the Ukraine war, that 15 to 20% that we're all using more than we would have done is twice the amount that we're reliant on Russia for. So we can halve our demand. In order to halve our demand, as well as all of those demand reduction strategies that we've lived with for a long time, which we call retrofit, there's also the way that we can move our remaining energy demand to electricity mainly. And if we do that, if we electrify just not just the power that we need to keep our mobile phones on, to do our cooking and all that sort of thing, but also our heating and our transport mainly to electricity, we can do that halving whilst only doubling our electricity use rather than tripling our electricity use. And the reason why that is important is because doubling our electricity use will mean that we do have to invest in the network and the wires and switches, as Scott was saying, but we don't have to do that as much. And what's really important for you and for the work that the Low Carbon Hub is doing as part of Project Leo, is that most of that change happens in what we call the low voltage network, which is where we all live and work. And that means that it's really important that wonderful organisations like Green Tea carry on doing the work that they've been doing. And what we're trying to demonstrate working with Green Tea and the parish councils and the district councils, a real coalition of rate-winning people, is to say, okay, if we're trying to do the sort of UK reduction, as Sam was talking about, We do need to know, given that we know a lot of that change is going to happen in the low voltage network, we do need to know what to do. And it's not just what we as consumers do, it's we in all of those roles that Sam was talking about do, so that we can play our part in drinking the beer wisely, so that we can not just drink the beer when it arrives at our house, but we can choose when to drink our beer. So we can shift the way when we use energy. We can do that wisely and smartly and improve our lives in so doing. That's the premise of what we're saying. It's not just that you'll reduce your bills, you'll have a much healthier house to live in that won't be drafty, won't cause asthma, won't have really awful air quality because of the dodgy gas boiler that you meant to replace but sort of haven't yet. It'll be a much cleaner future as well, and a future that's really safeguarding that future for our children and grandchildren, which is the pledge that we all made at the Rio Summit in 1992. And we don't want to break that. I don't want to break that. I committed to that. I actually had my first child in 1992. Comes right to my heart. So, what does that mean that we're going to do? We've been working with Green Tea and with the very good organisation called the Energy Systems Catapult to produce a local area energy plan for the energy primary substation area. Now, for those of you who don't know what a primary substation is, I'm not going to go on about that for ages. Just suffice to say that to get the energy from the offshore wind, or even from the local solar park, you have to have a system of wires, and you step the voltage up and down through that system, and the substations are where the switches are that transform voltage. And the primary substation is a particularly interesting one because it's really the last bit of the network that the network operators actually see working in real time. Below that, where we all live and work, they're drinking and pouring blind. And they're doing that to models, so they don't quite have their eyes shut, but they're sort of working to a model that says, pour, don't pour, pour. And it's assuming that we all put the kettle on and cook our breakfast in the morning, and then come home and put the kettle on and cook our dinner and put the telly on, and when the football match is finished, we all put the kettle on. As we make the transition to all of these zero carbon technologies and smart technologies, that pattern will change. And what we were really astonished by working with as part of Project Leo was quite how little the actual operators who are meant to balance that grid actually know about the system. But the good news is that so are they. They've now realised that they need to know a lot more. And so we're working with them as well to see what the plan would be for a primary substation area like Eynsham.
Barbara, just explain where our primary substation is and how many homes are on it.
Brilliant. I'm not sure I can remember how many homes. I'll have a go, and you can all tell me what
or the area that it serves.
So the area that it serves is Eynsham, obviously, Freeland, the Hambras, and a bit of South Lee. Is that located for everyone?
There are some maps.
There's a map over there. And it is about 10,500 people. And as you all know, and I know you've been through the mill on this, you've got lots and lots of new houses coming, which are going to take that up to about 16,500 houses. And we're trying out a technique for producing a local area energy plan where normally that local area energy plan is produced for about 300,000 people. So we're trying something completely new here to see if it will give us a way of working where the district council can know that we're doing this and be interested in it and take part in the steering of it. They probably have about another 12 primary substations in their area. So they've got a sort of believable, dealable with, handleable number of primary substation plans that they could have. But it means that the local people, the parish councils, Green Tea, other community people, the people who produce the neighbourhood plan, the sports clubs, the pubs, you name it, can all be going, oh, that's interesting, I can see an opportunity. Or, oh, that's interesting, I don't think that bit of data is quite right. Can we have a look at that? So it brings real local knowledge to get this planning right down to the level that we all live at, so that you all can be helped to know what to do. And so we're not just, and we can also, I know there's a bit of a sore point in Eynsham, but the hope is that we can also marry that energy planning much better with the development planning system. And we still have hopes that we're going to turn Saltcross around over time. We might have lost a battle, but we haven't lost the war yet, I would say. Maybe try and refight the battle. So what can we advocate for? What can we campaign for in our civic role for new development to be like? But also, what's special about Eynsham that we need to concentrate on? Where are our opportunities? Where are our challenges? What can we do tomorrow? So the Energy System Catapult is also looking at the business models that we might be able to apply in Eynsham, so that we are not in Eynsham just trying out a local area energy plan that then sits on the shelf. We've called it a zero carbon energy action plan. And so what we want to know is how not just to put it in place, but to work together over time to steward that plan and make sure it actually happens.
I was going to say, Barbara, give us just to help people envisage how that actually works in practice. If we had a local energy plan, which we've got some control of our local energy, give us some examples of how we would generate and balance demand, perhaps in some specific areas.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing with it is to take the Pathways to Zero Carbon Oxfordshire targets and metrics for two of the scenarios that Sam was talking about. Oxfordshire leading the way, or Eynsham leading the way, and societal transformation. And to be saying, okay, so if you took those numbers for Oxfordshire, for the population of Eynsham, what would that mean that Eynsham needs to do? So that we can have a much clearer understanding what the job is for the Eynsham primary substation. One of the first things we know is that Eynsham primary substation area actually is already producing quite a lot of the zero carbon power. Because of your solar farms. But there's enormous opportunity for rooftop solar that we haven't really started tapping yet. And then in terms of drinking the beer at the right time, we're testing out the possibilities offered by putting rooftop solar in households together with battery in households to see what impact that can make and whether we can then repeat that in Eynsham. And then we can see what impact that can have behind your own meter as a household or a business. But we can also put together models for how collections of households can work together to help balance behind the secondary substation, which is the most local switching down. So lots and lots and lots of different opportunities. We know that Eynsham is not going to have hydrogen anytime soon, it doesn't need that. We know that it's going to be very hard to do big district heating schemes. But we also know that most of the houses are suitable for one form of heat pump or another. There's opportunity for small collections of households potentially to work together on heat pump schemes. We also have a very good idea about one of the early challenges is going to be that currently about 1% of the cars in this area are EVs, but the projections are that we're going to go up the curve very quickly, and by about 2025, with the numbers of EVs coming into this area, we're going to be causing problems on the network. So we really have to get this flexibility happening in order to allow that change to EVs to happen, in order to be able to allow people to move to heat pumps, so that we can make room on the network and get the beer flowing in the right way, because we don't have time to wait for the network operators to upgrade the grid. You know, frankly, we don't want them to massively upgrade it anyway, because that's not efficient. But they will need to do some. We just can't wait for that. We need to know how to make more capacity on the network. And the way that we do that is by radically reducing the demand of households and businesses, by both fabric measures that we all know about, but also by producing and storing as much energy as possible. And if you do combine solar PV and battery, you can increase the capture of your own solar from about 30% up to 94–95%. So that's just some tasters of the things that we could do in energy. As well as being proud that as a community we've been behind the planning approvals for the solar farms that mean that we are overachieving in terms of the targets that Sam set in the PASCO report.
Thank you, Barbara. We have a few minutes, and we've got